Tonight, a struggling designer will walk into a mafia boss's world for $50,000 and discover the most dangerous man in New York has already decided she belongs to him. Selina Moretti thought it was just one night of pretending, one lie, one performance beside a powerful stranger at a wedding. But Dante Verrelli doesn't do pretend. And when he drops to one knee in front of the entire criminal underworld and proposes for real, Selina will face an impossible choice: run from the man everyone fears, or surrender to the only person who's ever made her feel alive. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment your city so I can see how far this journey has traveled. The email arrived on a Tuesday. Selina Moretti stared at her laptop screen in the corner of her cramped studio apartment, watching the rent notice taped to her fridge flutter in the breeze from the broken window she couldn't afford to fix. 3 months behind. The landlord had stopped being polite 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Exclusive opportunity, $50,000 for one evening." She should have deleted it immediately, should have recognized it as spam or worse. But desperation had a way of making stupid decisions feel logical, and Selina was drowning in desperation. Her freelance design business had collapsed 6 months ago when her biggest client declared bankruptcy without paying her final invoice. $16,000 vanished overnight. She'd been surviving on credit cards and Hope ever since, and both were maxed out. Selina clicked the email. "Miss Moretti, your profile has been reviewed and selected for a private engagement. The role requires discretion, professionalism, and the ability to perform under pressure. Compensation: $50,000 for approximately 6 hours of work. No physical contact beyond what is publicly appropriate. No illegal activity. If interested, respond within 24 hours. Further details will be provided after preliminary vetting. VE Associates." Selina's hands hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed this was dangerous. $50,000 for 6 hours. Nothing legitimate paid that kind of money. This was either a scam or something dark enough to make her stomach twist. But then she looked around her apartment, at the stack of past due bills on the counter, the empty fridge, the design portfolio she'd poured her soul into, now gathering dust because no one was hiring. She was 28 years old and failing at everything that mattered. What did she have to lose that she hadn't already lost? Selina typed a response before fear could stop her. "I'm interested. What's the role?" The reply came in under 3 minutes. Book. 2 days later, Selina sat in a black sedan with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see the street outside. The driver hadn't spoken a single word since picking her up outside a coffee shop in Midtown. He was broad-shouldered, expressionless, and wore an earpiece that occasionally crackled with voices she couldn't understand. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You will meet Mr. Verrelli at 7 p.m. He will explain the arrangement personally. Do not ask questions in front of others. Do not use your phone during the meeting. If you choose to decline after hearing the details, you will be compensated $500 for your time and driven home safely." Selina's throat tightened. She'd done research on the name Verrelli. Not much came up, just whispers on forums, a few buried news articles about alleged organized crime connections, and one photo of a man in an expensive suit leaving a courthouse flanked by lawyers. Dante Verrelli. The image had been grainy, taken from a distance, but even through the blur she'd felt something unsettling. He wasn't smiling, wasn't frowning, just existing with the kind of presence that made everyone around him look smaller. The car stopped. Selina's heart hammered against her ribs as the driver opened her door. She stepped out onto a private street lined with old mansions hidden behind iron gates and manicured hedges. The air smelled like money and secrets. "This way," the driver said. His voice was gravel. They walked through a side entrance into a building that didn't look like a home. It looked like a fortress, high ceilings, marble floors, security cameras in every corner. 2 more men in dark suits stood near the staircase, watching her with blank expressions that somehow felt like threats. Selina's hands were sweating. The driver led her down a hallway lined with paintings that probably cost more than her entire life, and stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. He knocked twice. "Come in." The voice from inside was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to make you listen. The driver opened the door and stepped aside. Selina walked in. The office was massive, Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the skyline glowing in the early evening light. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of timber. And behind that desk sat Dante Virelli. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s. Black hair pushed back carelessly, sharp jawline, and eyes so pale they looked almost silver in the dim lighting. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms marked with ink, tattoos that looked expensive and deliberate. But it wasn't the tattoos or the expensive watch or the perfect tailoring that made Selina freeze. It was the way he looked at her, like he was deciding whether she was worth the trouble. Dante didn't stand, didn't smile. He just gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Selina sat. Her pulse was loud in her ears. For a long moment, Dante said nothing. He just studied her with the kind of focus that made her feel exposed, like he could see every lie she'd ever told and every mistake she'd ever made. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. You need money, he said. Not a question. Selina swallowed. Yes. Badly. Yes. Dante's expression didn't change. I need someone to play a role. My girlfriend. For one night. Maybe two if things go longer than expected. Selina blinked. Your girlfriend? There's a wedding this weekend. Private event. A lot of people I do business with will be there. I need someone on my arm who looks like they belong. His gaze flicked over her, assessing, clinical. You fit the profile. What profile? Beautiful. Intelligent enough to hold a conversation, not connected to my world. He paused. Disposable, if necessary. The word hit her like cold water. Disposable. Selina's jaw tightened. I'm not interested in being anyone's disposable anything. Dante's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement. Fair, let me rephrase. You're not part of my life, which means when this is over, you disappear. No complications, no strings, just money and a clean exit. Why me? Because you're desperate enough to say yes and smart enough to keep your mouth shut. He slid a folder across the desk. 50,000, half up front, half when it's done. You show up, smile, pretend you care about me for a few hours, then you leave. Selina stared at the folder. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a contract, clean, professional, terrifyingly specific. The participant agrees to portray the romantic partner of Dante Virelli at designated events. Physical contact will be limited to hand-holding, arm-linking, and brief displays of affection as deemed appropriate by Mr. Virelli. The participant will not disclose details of this arrangement to any third party under penalty of legal action. And at the bottom, compensation, $50,000. Selina looked up. What if I say no? Dante's pale eyes didn't blink. Then you walk out of here with $500 and we never see each other again. And if I say yes? Then you belong to me for the weekend. The way he said it made her skin prickle. Not belong in a romantic sense, belong like property, like something he owned. Selina should have stood up, should have walked out, should have trusted the instinct screaming at her that this man was dangerous in ways she couldn't begin to understand. But then she thought about the eviction notice, the empty bank account, the shame of calling her mother and admitting she'd failed. She thought about survival. I need to know what I'm walking into, Selina said quietly. Who you really are. Dante tilted his head slightly, and for the first time something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, just interest. You already know, he said, or you wouldn't be here. Selina's stomach twisted. You're Dante Virelli. And people are scared of you. Good. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. Fear keeps people honest. It keeps them alive. If you're smart, you'll be a little scared of me too. I am. Dante studied her for another long beat. Then he pushed a pen across the desk. Sign it or don't, but decide now. I don't have time to waste. Selina's hand shook as she picked up the pen. Every rational part of her brain screamed to stop, to walk away, to find another way. But desperation wasn't rational. She signed her name at the bottom of the contract. Dante took the folder back without a word. He opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the desk. Selina didn't need to open it to know what was inside. $25,000. Car will pick you up Friday at 6, Dante said, already looking back at his computer screen like she'd stopped existing. Wear something elegant, nothing flashy, and don't be late. Selena stood on shaking legs. She made it halfway to the door before his voice stopped her. Selena. She turned. Dante was watching her again, and this time there was something unreadable in his expression. Once you walk into that wedding with me, he said quietly, everyone there will assume you're mine. They'll look at you differently, treat you differently. Some will try to use you, some will try to hurt you just to hurt me. He paused. If that scares you, walk away now. Selena's throat was dry. And if I don't? Dante's pale eyes held hers. Then I'll make sure no one touches you. It should have sounded protective. Instead, it sounded like a threat and a promise wrapped together so tightly she couldn't tell them apart. Selena left without another word. Friday came too fast. Selena spent 2 days trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. She paid her rent, bought groceries, stared at the remaining money in the envelope like it might disappear if she blinked. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dante's face, that cold, assessing stare. The way he'd said you belong to me like it was a fact instead of an arrangement. At 6 p.m., the black sedan pulled up outside her building. Same driver, same silence. Selena wore the only elegant dress she owned, a simple black number she'd bought years ago for a gallery opening that never led anywhere. She'd done her makeup carefully, styled her hair, and tried to look like someone who belonged in Dante Virelli's world. The driver took her to a different location this time, a penthouse in a building so expensive it didn't even have the address visible from the street. The elevator required a key card. The hallway smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The door to the penthouse was already open. Selena stepped inside and froze. The space was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like art, everything pristine and cold and perfect. Dante stood near the windows, buttoning the cuffs of a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. He looked up when she entered, and for a brief second something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe. Or hunger. "Close the door," he said. Selena obeyed. Dante crossed the room slowly, his gaze moving over her in a way that made her heartbeat stutter. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, studying her like she was a problem he needed to solve. "You'll do," he said finally. "Thanks," Selena muttered. "I think." Dante's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Nervous? Shouldn't I be?" "Yes." He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and woodsy. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "But you're going to pretend you're not. Tonight you smile. You stay close to me. You don't talk to anyone unless I tell you to. And if someone asks you a question you don't know how to answer, you look at me and let me handle it. Why? Because the people at this wedding will eat you alive if they think you're weak." Selena's stomach twisted. "What kind of wedding is this?" Dante's pale eyes held hers. "The kind where everyone's armed and half the guests have killed someone." Her breath caught. Dante reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was gentle, possessive, terrifying. "Don't be scared," he murmured. "I told you. No one touches what's mine. I'm not yours. Tonight you are." He stepped back and offered his arm. Selena hesitated for only a second before taking it. His body was solid beneath the expensive suit, warm, real. And the moment her hand rested in the crook of his elbow, she felt the shift. She wasn't Selena Moretti anymore. She was Dante Virelli's woman. And that changed everything. Maseku. The wedding was being held at an estate outside the city. The kind of place that didn't show up on maps. The kind surrounded by gates, guards, and enough security to make a government building jealous. Selena sat beside Dante in the back of a different car, this one armored, the driver armed, another man in the passenger seat watching the road like he expected an ambush. Dante hadn't spoken since they left the penthouse. He sat with one arm draped across the back of the seat, his hand resting near her shoulder. Not touching, just there, claiming space. Selena stared out the window and tried to slow her breathing. "Relax," Dante said without looking at her. "I'm relaxed." "You're shaking." She was. Damn it. Dante's hand moved to her shoulder, firm and steady. Breathe. You're not in danger, not with me. How do you know? He finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her throat tighten. Because anyone who tries to hurt you dies. He said it so simply, so matter of fact, like it wasn't a threat. Just the truth. Selena didn't know if that made her feel safer or more terrified. The car pulled through the gates of the estate and Selena's breath caught. The mansion was enormous. Old-world elegance mixed with modern wealth. Fountains, gardens, guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits stepping out of luxury cars while men in dark suits watched from the shadows. Dante's hand slid down to hers. Stay close, he murmured, and remember, you're mine tonight. Act like it. Before Selena could respond, the door opened. Dante stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. Selena took it. The moment she emerged from the car, she felt it. Eyes. Dozens of them. Watching. Assessing. Judging. Dante pulled her close, his arm sliding around her waist, possessive, protective, and every person staring at them immediately looked away. Good, Dante murmured against her ear. Now smile. Selena forced her lips to curve, and together they walked into the lion's den. The wedding reception was elegant and terrifying in equal measure. Crystal chandeliers, tables draped in silk, a live orchestra playing something classical and haunting. But beneath the beauty, Selena felt the tension crackling like electricity. These weren't normal wedding guests. They moved differently, spoke in low tones. Men with hard eyes and expensive watches, women dripping in diamonds with smiles that never reached their faces. And everyone watched Dante. He moved through the crowd like a king inspecting his court. People stepped aside when he approached. Men nodded with respect that looked like fear. Women smiled too brightly, their gazes lingering on him before flicking to Selena with thinly veiled curiosity. Dante's hand never left her waist. They stopped at a table where an older man sat with a woman half his age. The man stood immediately, offering his hand. Dante, good to see you. Dante shook his hand briefly. Marco. Marco's gaze slid to Selena. And who's this? Selena, Dante said. His tone was flat, final. My girlfriend. The word sent a shiver down her spine. Marco's smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. Beautiful. You're a lucky man. I know. Dante pulled Selena closer, and she could feel the tension in his body. Not fear, control, like he was constantly calculating every word, every movement, every threat. They moved on. More introductions. More assessing stares. More conversations that felt like verbal chess matches where Selena was a piece being moved around the board. Finally, Dante led her to a quieter corner near the garden doors. He handed her a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Drink, he said. You look like you're about to pass out. Selena took a sip. The bubbles burned her throat. This is insane. This is business. These people are terrifying. Dante's mouth curved slightly. Good instincts. Who are they? People who would kill you without blinking if they thought it would benefit them. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. That's why you stay next to me. Always. Selena's hands trembled around the glass. Why did you really bring me here? Dante's pale eyes locked on hers. Because I needed them to see you, he said quietly. To know you exist, to understand that touching you means starting a war they can't win. Her breath caught. Why? Because I'm tired of being alone. The admission was so raw, so unexpected, that Selena forgot how to breathe. But before she could respond, a voice cut through the air behind them. Dante Varelli. Still breaking hearts, I see. Selena turned. A woman stood a few feet away. Elegant, older. Dressed in a gown that probably cost more than Selena's entire apartment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes, sharp, intelligent, merciless, were fixed on Selena like a predator sizing up prey. Dante's entire body went rigid. Mother, he said coldly. Selena's stomach dropped. This was Isabella Varelli, the Mafia queen, and judging by the look in her eyes, she already knew Selena didn't belong here. Isabella stepped closer, her smile thin and dangerous. So, she said softly, her gaze never leaving Selena's face. This is the girl my son is pretending to love. Selena's heart stopped. Dante's hand tightened on her waist, and when he spoke, his voice was ice. Careful, mother. Isabella's smile widened. Oh, darling, she murmured, I'm always careful. And in that moment, Selena realized something terrifying. Dante Varelli might be the most dangerous man in New York. But his mother was the one who taught him how to be a monster. Isabella Varelli didn't blink. She stood 3 feet away from Selena with the posture of a woman who had spent decades commanding rooms full of men who killed for a living. Her gown was burgundy silk, her jewelry understated but worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, and her smile never wavered. But her eyes were calculating. Introduce us properly, Dante, Isabella said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey. I'd like to know the name of the woman wearing my son's arm like a trophy. Dante's grip on Selena's waist tightened, not painfully, just enough to remind her he was there. Selena Moretti, he said flatly. Selena, this is my mother, Isabella Varelli. Selena forced herself to meet the older woman's gaze. Every instinct screamed to look away, to shrink back, to apologize for existing in this woman's world. Instead, she extended her hand. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Varelli. Isabella stared at Selena's outstretched hand for 3 long seconds before taking it. Her grip was firm, cold. Moretti? Isabella repeated slowly, like she was tasting the name. Italian? My grandfather, Selena said. He immigrated in the 50s. And what does your family do, Selena? The question sounded polite. It wasn't. Selena felt Dante shift beside her, tension rolling off him in waves. But before he could intervene, she answered. My father was a construction worker. My mother's a nurse. I'm a graphic designer. Isabella's smile curved wider. How quaint. The word landed like a slap. Dante's voice went dangerous. Mother. What? Isabella's expression was all innocence. I'm simply getting to know the woman you brought to the Castellano wedding. Surely you expected me to be curious. Her gaze flicked back to Selena. After all, my son has never brought anyone to a family event before. Not once in 15 years. So you must be very special. Selena's throat tightened. She could feel eyes on them now. Other guests slowing their conversations, watching the exchange like wolves sensing blood. She is, Dante said coldly. Isabella tilted her head. Is she? Or is she simply convenient? That's enough. I'm only asking questions any mother would ask. Isabella's smile never faltered. Tell me, Selena, how long have you and my son been together? Selena's mind raced. They hadn't prepared for this, hadn't discussed details. She didn't know what Dante had told people, what story he'd built, what lies she was supposed to support. 6 months, Dante said before Selena could answer. Isabella's eyebrows rose. 6 months, and yet I'm only hearing about her now. I don't report my personal life to you. No, Isabella agreed softly. You don't. Which makes me wonder what else you're keeping from the family. The air between them crackled with tension so thick Selena could barely breathe. She felt trapped between 2 predators circling each other, waiting for the first sign of weakness. Then Isabella's expression shifted. The cold calculation melted into something warmer. She reached out and touched Selena's arm gently. Forgive me, she said, her voice suddenly kind. I don't mean to interrogate you, dear. I'm simply protective of my son. I'm sure you understand. Selena nodded because she didn't trust her voice. Isabella squeezed her arm once before releasing it. Enjoy the wedding. We'll talk more later. She walked away without another word, gliding through the crowd like a queen dismissing subjects. Selena exhaled shakily. Dante's jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Don't listen to her. She hates me. She hates everyone. She knows, Selena whispered. She knows this isn't real. Dante turned to face her fully, his pale eyes burning with something fierce and unreadable. It doesn't matter what she knows. You're here. You're with me. That's all anyone needs to understand. Before Selena could respond, a man appeared beside them, younger than Dante, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way. He wore a navy suit and a grin that looked friendly but felt predatory. Dante, the man said, didn't think you'd actually show up. Dante's expression didn't change. Marco. And you brought a date. Marco's gaze slid to Selena with open appreciation. Now I'm really surprised. Selena, this is Marco Castellano, Dante said, his voice flat. The groom's cousin. Marco, this is Selena, my girlfriend. Marco extended his hand, and when Selena took it, he held on a beat too long. Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. Dante's lucky. He is, Selena said, pulling her hand back. Marco laughed. She's got fire. I like it. He clapped Dante on the shoulder. Good to see you settling down, man. We were starting to think you'd die alone in that fortress of yours. Dante's expression was stone. I'm not settling down. No? Marco's grin widened. Then what do you call this? None of your business. The temperature between them dropped 10 degrees. Marco raised his hands in mock surrender. Relax, I'm just messing with you. His gaze flicked back to Selena. You should know what you're getting into with this one. Dante doesn't do relationships. He does transactions. Marco, Dante said quietly, walk away. I'm just being honest. Walk away. Something in Dante's voice made Marco's smile falter. He studied Dante for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Sure, yeah, I'll catch you later. He winked at Selena. Nice meeting you. He disappeared into the crowd. Selena's hands were shaking. What was that? A warning, Dante said. From who? Everyone. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of faces and forced smiles. Dante kept Selena close, his hand always on her waist, her arm, the small of her back, claiming her in a way that made every person who approached them immediately understand the boundaries. But the longer the night went on, the more Selena felt the weight of the performance crushing her. She wasn't Dante's girlfriend. She was a prop, a shield, a message to the world that Dante Varelli had something they couldn't touch. And everyone here knew it. Dinner was served at long tables draped in white silk. Selena sat beside Dante, painfully aware of Isabella's gaze from across the room. The older woman watched them throughout the meal, her expression unreadable, and every time Selena glanced up, those sharp eyes were waiting. Dante barely touched his food. He spoke in low tones to the men seated nearby. Conversations Selena couldn't follow, filled with names she didn't recognize and references to business deals that sounded more like veiled threats. At one point, a woman leaned across the table and smiled at Selena. You must tell me where you bought that dress, she said sweetly. It's so simple. Selena recognized the insult immediately. Before she could respond, Dante's hand covered hers on the table. He didn't look at the woman, didn't acknowledge her, just squeezed Selena's fingers once, a silent message. Ignore her. Selena swallowed the anger rising in her throat and forced a smile. Thank you. The woman's smile tightened, and she turned away. Dante leaned close, his breath warm against Selena's ear. You're doing well. I feel like I'm drowning. You're not. Just keep breathing. After dinner, the crowd moved to the ballroom for dancing. The orchestra played something slow and haunting, and couples drifted onto the floor in a choreographed waltz that looked more like a display of power than romance. Dante stood and offered his hand. I don't know how to dance like that, Selena whispered. Doesn't matter. Follow my lead. She took his hand because refusing would draw more attention, and Dante led her onto the floor with the confidence of a man who had never doubted himself in his life. His hand settled on her waist. Hers rested on his shoulder. And when the music swelled, he moved. Selena stumbled once, but Dante caught her effortlessly, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. His body was solid and warm, and despite everything, the fear, the lies, the danger, she felt something shift inside her chest. Safe. She felt safe. Stop thinking, Dante murmured. I can't. Yes, you can. Just look at me. Selena lifted her gaze and met his pale eyes. Up close, they weren't cold. They were storm clouds, barely holding back lightning. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Dante's jaw tightened. I told you I needed them to see you. Why? For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hand tightened on her waist, and he spoke so softly she almost didn't hear him. Because I'm tired of being alone. The words hit her harder than any threat. Before she could respond, the music ended. Applause rippled through the room, and Dante stepped back, his expression shuddering closed again. "Come on," he said. "We're leaving." "Already?" "I've stayed long enough." He led her off the floor and toward the exit, weaving through the crowd with the kind of ease that came from years of navigating rooms full of predators. But just as they reached the doors, a voice stopped them. "Leaving so soon?" Isabella appeared in front of them, blocking their path. She held a champagne flute and wore the same serene smile that made Selina's skin crawl. "Yes," Dante said flatly. "Without saying goodbye? How rude." Isabella's gaze slid to Selina. "Walk with me, dear, just for a moment." It wasn't a request. Selina glanced at Dante, panic flaring in her chest. His expression darkened. "No." "I'm not asking you, Dante," Isabella said coolly. "I'm asking her." She looked at Selina. "Surely you can spare 2 minutes for your boyfriend's mother." Selina's throat was dry. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to stay next to Dante, to not let this woman get her alone. But refusing would cause a scene, and causing a scene would break the illusion they'd worked so hard to build. "It's fine," Selina said quietly. Dante's hand tightened on her waist. "Selina, I'll be right back." She pulled away before he could stop her and followed Isabella toward the garden doors. Behind her, she heard Dante's voice, low and furious, but she couldn't make out the words. Isabella led her outside onto a terrace, overlooking manicured gardens lit by soft lanterns. The night air was cool, and the sounds of the party faded to a distant hum. They walked in silence for several seconds before Isabella spoke. "You're not what I expected." Selina kept her voice steady. "What did you expect?" "Someone harder, more ambitious." Isabella stopped near a stone fountain and turned to face her. "Instead, I see a girl who's terrified and pretending not to be." Selina's hands clenched. "I'm not pretending." "Oh, darling, you absolutely are." Isabella took a sip of champagne, studying Selina over the rim of her glass. "Let me be very clear with you. My son is not a man who falls in love. He doesn't trust. He doesn't soften. He builds walls and destroys anyone who tries to climb them." "I'm not trying to climb anything." "Then what are you trying to do?" Selina hesitated. The truth was impossible, the lie even worse. Isabella smiled. "You don't know, do you? That's what makes this so dangerous." "I don't understand." "You will." Isabella set her glass down on the edge of the fountain. "Dante brought you here for a reason. Maybe he told you it was business. Maybe he told you it was protection. But the truth is simpler and far more terrifying." Selina's heart pounded. "What truth?" Isabella stepped closer, and when she spoke, her voice was soft and merciless. "He's testing you, to see if you'll break, to see if you're strong enough to survive in his world. And when you inevitably fail, because you will fail, dear, he'll discard you without a second thought." The words felt like knives. Selina forced herself to meet Isabella's gaze. "You don't know that. I know my son better than anyone alive." Isabella's expression was almost pitying. "He's my greatest achievement and my biggest regret. I raised him to be ruthless because this world demands it. But that ruthlessness comes with a price." "What price?" "He'll never love you," Isabella said simply. "Not the way you want him to. Not the way you're already starting to hope he will." Selina's breath caught. Isabella reached out and touched her cheek gently, a gesture so at odds with her words that Selina flinched. "You seem like a sweet girl," Isabella murmured. "So let me give you some advice. Take the money he's paying you. Walk away tonight. And never look back." "Why do you care?" "Because I don't want to watch another innocent person get destroyed by my son's inability to be human." Isabella's hand dropped, and she turned to walk back toward the mansion. Selina stood frozen, her mind spinning. Another person. How many others had there been? How many women had Dante brought into his world and discarded? Was she really just the latest in a long line of mistakes? Dante was waiting near the car when Selina returned. His expression was dark, his jaw tight, and the moment he saw her, he crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. "What did she say to you?" Selina shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "Like hell it doesn't." Dante gripped her arms, his pale eyes searching her face. "Tell me." She told me to leave. His hands tightened. And she said you'd destroy me. Dante's expression went cold. She's wrong. Is she? Yes. How do you know? Because I won't let it happen. Selena pulled away from him, anger and fear and confusion tangling together in her chest. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to drag me into this world and then promise I'll be safe when everyone here is telling me I'm not. Dante stared at her, something raw flickering across his face. You want to leave? Fine. Walk away. I'll have the driver take you home right now. Selena's throat tightened. Why did you really bring me here? I told you. No, not the rehearsed answer, the real one. For a long moment, Dante said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping. Because I needed to see if I could do it, he said quietly. If I could pretend to be normal for one night. If I could stand next to someone and not feel like a monster. The admission shattered something inside her. And? Selena whispered. Dante's pale eyes met hers, and the vulnerability in them was so unexpected it stole her breath. I still feel like a monster, he said. But with you, it's easier to forget. Selena didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process the truth bleeding through his words. Before she could respond, Dante turned and walked toward the car. Get in, he said without looking back. We're done here. Selena followed. The drive back to the city was silent. Dante stared out the window, his expression unreadable, and Selena sat with her hands clenched in her lap, replaying every conversation, every warning, every moment that felt like it mattered. When they reached the penthouse, Dante walked her to the elevator. Stay, he said suddenly. Selena blinked. What? Stay tonight. It's late. I'll have someone take you home in the morning. Dante, please. The word was so quiet, so unlike him, that Selena couldn't refuse. She nodded. Fine. The penthouse felt different at night. Quieter. The city lights glowed through the windows like distant stars, and the silence pressed in from all sides. Dante poured himself a drink, whiskey, neat, and stood near the windows with his back to her. Selena sat on the edge of the couch, still wearing the black dress, still trying to process everything that had happened. Your mother hates me, she said finally. Dante took a sip of his drink. My mother hates everyone. She said you'd destroy me. She's probably right. The honesty hit harder than a lie would have. Selena stood and crossed the room until she was standing beside him. Then why did you ask me to stay? Dante turned to face her, and the exhaustion in his expression made him look younger, more human. Because I don't want to be alone tonight, he said simply. Selena's chest tightened. She should leave, should walk out the door and never look back, should listen to every warning she'd been given. Instead, she reached up and touched his face. Dante went completely still. I'm not afraid of you, Selena whispered. You should be. I know. His hand came up to cover hers, and for a moment they just stood there. Two people trapped in a lie that was starting to feel dangerously real. Then Dante leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was desperate and raw, and filled with everything he couldn't say out loud. Selena kissed him back because she didn't know how to stop. And somewhere between the lies and the fear and the impossible situation they'd created, something shifted. This wasn't pretend anymore. Selena woke up alone. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then the memories crashed back. The wedding, Isabella's warnings, Dante's kiss. She sat up slowly, her heart pounding. The penthouse was silent. She found Dante in the kitchen, dressed in dark jeans and a white t-shirt, drinking coffee and staring at his phone with an expression that made her stomach twist. Morning, she said quietly. He looked up, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. We have a problem, he said. Selena's pulse spiked. What kind of problem? Dante turned his phone around. On the screen was a photo, grainy but clear enough. Selena and Dante on the terrace at the wedding, her hand on his face, his arms around her waist, the moment right before he kissed her. And beneath the photo, a headline. Dante Varelli's mystery woman. Who is she? Selena's blood turned cold. Oh God, it gets worse. Dante scrolled down and Selena saw more photos. Her getting out of the car, her dancing with Dante, her standing beside Isabella. And beneath each one, comments, speculation, people digging into her life, finding her social media, her address, her family. They know who I am, Selena whispered. Not yet, Dante said. But they will. By tonight, every journalist in the city will be looking for you. Every rival family will know your face. Every enemy I've ever made will see you as a weakness they can exploit. Selena's hands started shaking. What do we do? Dante set his phone down and crossed the room until he was standing in front of her. His expression was harder now, colder. The vulnerability from last night was gone, replaced by the ruthless man who ruled New York's underworld. You have two choices, he said quietly. You walk away now. I pay you the rest of what I owe you, and you disappear. New city, new name if necessary. I'll make sure you're protected. Or, Dante's pale eyes held hers, or you stay, and we make this real. Selena's breath stopped. What? The story's already out there. People think we're together. If you leave now, it looks like weakness. It makes you a target. But if you stay... He paused. If you stay, I can protect you. For real. Not just for one night. You're asking me to actually be your girlfriend? I'm asking you to survive. Selena's mind raced. This was insane. She'd signed up for one night. One performance. Not a life trapped inside Dante Virelli's dangerous world. But Isabella's words echoed in her mind. When you inevitably fail, he'll discard you. And beneath the fear, something else whispered. What if you don't want to leave? I need time to think, Selena said. Dante nodded. You have until tonight. After that, the decision gets made for you. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered without looking away from her. What? His expression darkened as he listened. Then he cursed under his breath. I'll be there in 20. He hung up and grabbed his jacket. I have to go. Stay here. Don't leave the building. Don't answer the door. Don't talk to anyone. What's happening? Dante's jaw tightened. Someone just tried to kill Marco Castellano. Selena's blood ran cold. The man from last night? Yes. Is he... He's alive. Barely. Dante's expression was stone, which means someone's making a move. And if they're coming for the Castellanos, they'll come for me next. He crossed the room and gripped her shoulders. Stay here, he repeated. I mean it, Selena. Don't leave. Then he was gone, and Selena was left alone in a penthouse overlooking a city that suddenly felt like a war zone. Muchachos. Hours passed. Selena paced the penthouse, her mind spinning. She tried calling Dante. No answer. She tried searching for news about Marco. Nothing concrete, just rumors and speculation flooding social media. By evening, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator. The lobby was empty except for the doorman, who looked at her with barely concealed recognition. The photos had spread. People knew her face now. Selena stepped outside into the cool evening air and immediately felt eyes on her. A black sedan sat across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. Her pulse spiked. She turned to go back inside, but the sedan's doors opened and two men stepped out. They wore suits, moved with purpose. Selena ran. She didn't think. Didn't plan. Just bolted down the sidewalk, her heels clicking against concrete, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, footsteps. She turned a corner, nearly colliding with a couple walking their dog. Kept running. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Then a hand grabbed her arm and yanked her into an alley. Selena screamed, but a hand covered her mouth. Quiet. The voice was familiar. She turned and found herself staring at Marco Castellano. He looked like hell. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, and blood stained his shirt beneath his jacket. But he was alive. What are you doing? He hissed. I was leaving. You just walked out of Dante's building alone? Are you insane? I didn't know. Those men following you work for the Rossi family. They would have grabbed you, tortured you for information, and sent Dante pieces of you in a box. Selena's stomach lurched. Marco pulled out his phone and dialed. Yeah, it's me. I've got her. No, she's fine. Dante's going to lose his mind. I know. Just get someone here now. He hung up and looked at Selena with something between pity and exasperation. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, do you? Selena shook her head. Marco laughed bitterly. Dante brought you to that wedding to send a message. That he had something worth protecting, something that made him human. He wiped blood from his lip. But all he did was paint a target on your back. Why are you helping me? Because Dante saved my life once. And because if you die, he'll burn this entire city to the ground. Before Selena could respond, headlights flooded the alley. A car screeched to a stop, and the back door flew open. Dante stepped out, and the look on his face was pure murder. He crossed the distance to Selena in 3 strides, grabbed her arm, and pulled her toward the car without a word. Dante? Not here. He shoved her into the back seat, slammed the door, and turned to Marco. You good? Marco nodded. I'll live. Go to the safe house. Don't come out until I call. Then Dante got in the car, and they sped into the night. But bright. The silence was suffocating. Dante sat beside her, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping his knees so tightly his knuckles were white. Selena could feel the rage radiating off him like heat. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sorry? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. You left the building after I specifically told you not to, after I warned you what would happen. I didn't think... No, you didn't. He finally looked at her, and the fury in his pale eyes made her shrink back. You could have died tonight, Selena. Do you understand that? Those men would have taken you, hurt you, used you to get to me, and there would have been nothing I could do to stop it. Tears burned her eyes. I was scared. You should be. The car pulled into an underground garage Selena didn't recognize. Dante got out and walked toward a private elevator without waiting for her. Selena followed. The elevator took them to a penthouse even more fortified than the last. Security cameras, reinforced doors, windows that looked bulletproof. Dante poured himself a drink and downed it in one swallow. You're staying here, he said, until this is over. Until what's over? The war that's coming. Selena's breath caught. War? Dante turned to face her, and the exhaustion in his expression broke her heart. Someone tried to kill Marco to send me a message, to show they're not afraid, to prove they can get close. He set the glass down. Which means I have to respond, and when I do, people will die. Dante, this is what my life is, Selena. Blood and violence and endless fighting to stay on top. And now you're part of it. I didn't ask to be. No, he agreed quietly. But you are. The moment you walked into that wedding with me, you became mine. And everyone out there knows it. Selena's hands were shaking. I want to go home. You can't. It's not safe. Then what am I supposed to do? Dante crossed the room until he was standing in front of her. He reached up and cupped her face, his touch surprisingly gentle. You survive, he said softly, and you let me protect you. Why? Because I can't lose you. The admission hung between them like a confession. Selena stared up at him, and for the first time she saw past the walls, past the violence, past the reputation. She saw a man drowning in loneliness, and she realized with terrifying clarity she was already in too deep to walk away. Selena didn't sleep. She lay in the guest bedroom of Dante's fortified penthouse, staring at the ceiling while the city lights bled through the bulletproof windows. Every sound made her flinch. Every creak in the walls felt like footsteps approaching. Around 3 a.m, she gave up trying. She found Dante in his office, still dressed, sitting behind a massive desk covered in papers and photographs. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked up when she entered but didn't speak. Selena crossed the room and sat in the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Finally, Dante pushed a folder across the desk. These are the men who tried to grab you tonight. Selena opened it. 2 faces stared back at her from surveillance photos. Hard eyes, brutal mouths. Men who looked like they'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. Anthony and Carlo Rossi, Dante said, his voice flat. Enforcers for the Rossi family. The same family that tried to kill Marco. Selena's throat tightened. What happens to them? They're already dead. The words were so casual, so matter-of-fact, that Selena's stomach turned. You killed them? My people did. 2 hours ago. Dante's pale eyes met hers. They won't touch you again. Selena closed the folder with shaking hands. How many people have died because of me? 2 tonight, more will follow. Dante, this isn't your fault. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. This war was coming whether you existed or not. The Rossis have been pushing boundaries for months. They just decided to use you as the excuse. I don't want people dying because of me. Then you shouldn't have stayed. The truth of it hit her like a fist. Selena stood abruptly. Maybe I should leave. Right now. Before this gets worse. Dante stood too, moving around the desk with predatory grace. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. You think leaving will stop this? His voice was low and dangerous. You think walking away makes you invisible? Every enemy I have already knows your face, your name, where you live, who your family is. Selena's breath caught. My family? Your mother works at Mount Sinai Hospital, night shift, 3 days a week. Your brother lives in Brooklyn with his girlfriend. Your best friend from college runs a coffee shop in the West Village. Dante's expression was stone. I know all of it because I had to. Because the moment you walked into my world, they became targets too. Horror flooded through her. You're watching them? I'm protecting them. There's a difference. You had no right. I had every right the second you signed that contract. Dante's jaw clenched. You think this is a game? You think you can just step in and out of my life without consequences? I didn't ask for this. Yes, you did. The moment you took my money, the moment you walked into that wedding, the moment you kissed me back. His voice dropped to something raw. You chose this, Selena. Now you have to live with it. Tears burned her eyes. I hate you. Good. Hate keeps you alive. Dante turned and walked back to his desk, dismissing her. Selena stood frozen, rage and fear, and something worse tangling in her chest. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to run until her legs gave out. Instead, she walked out of the office and locked herself in the bathroom. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she let herself cry. Morning came with gunfire. Selena jolted awake to the sound of glass shattering and men shouting. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she scrambled out of bed, adrenaline flooding her system. The bedroom door burst open. One of Dante's men stood there, gun drawn, expression grim. Get dressed. Now. We're moving you. What's happening? They found us. Selena's blood turned to ice. She threw on jeans and a sweater with shaking hands while the guard barked orders into his radio. Outside, she could hear more shouting, more breaking glass, the unmistakable crack of gunshots. The guard grabbed her arm and pulled her into the hallway. The penthouse was chaos. Men in dark suits moved through the space like a military unit, weapons drawn, voices clipped and professional. Someone had shattered the living room windows. Bullet holes pocked the walls, blood smeared across the marble floor near the entrance. Selena's stomach lurched. Where's Dante? Securing the perimeter. Move. The guard dragged her toward a private elevator hidden behind a panel in the wall. They stepped inside and he pressed his palm against a scanner. The doors closed just as another volley of gunfire erupted behind them. The elevator descended into darkness. Selena's hands wouldn't stop shaking. How did they find us? Someone talked. Who? The guard's expression was granite. We'll find out. The elevator opened into an underground garage filled with armored vehicles. Another man waited beside a black SUV with the engine already running. They shoved Selena into the back seat. Where are we going? Safe house outside the city. You'll stay there until this is over. I want to see Dante. Not possible. I need to know he's okay. He's handling it. That's all you need to know. The SUV peeled out of the garage and onto the street. Selena twisted in her seat, looking back at the building they'd just escaped. Smoke poured from one of the upper floors. Police sirens wailed in the distance. People had died in there. Maybe were still dying. And it was all because Dante Varelli had decided she was worth protecting. The safe house was a nightmare dressed as luxury. It sat on 20 acres of wooded property an hour north of the city, surrounded by a 12-foot fence topped with cameras and motion sensors. The house itself was modern and sterile, all glass and concrete and surveillance equipment. 4 guards rotated shifts around the perimeter. Another stayed inside with Selena at all times. She wasn't a guest. She was a prisoner. 3 days passed without word from Dante. Selena paced the house like a caged animal, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if he was dead? What if the Rossis had killed him? What if she was trapped here forever, waiting for a man who would never come back? On the 4th day, Isabella Varelli arrived. Selena heard the car before she saw it, an expensive purr of engine followed by doors slamming. She looked out the window and watched Isabella emerge from a black Mercedes, dressed in a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than Selena's entire wardrobe. Panic spiked through her. One of the guards opened the front door, and Isabella swept inside like she owned the place. Her gaze found Selena immediately. "Leave us," she told the guards. They hesitated. "Now." The guards retreated and Isabella smiled. "Hello, Selena. We need to talk." They sat across from each other in the living room. Isabella crossed her legs elegantly, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Selena's hands clenched in her lap. "Where's Dante?" "Cleaning up the mess you created." The words landed like a slap. "I didn't create anything." "Didn't you?" Isabella tilted her head. "My son brought you into our world, paraded you in front of every enemy we have, and now those enemies are using you as an excuse to start a war. That's not my fault, isn't it? You could have walked away. Instead, you stayed. You let Dante believe you were worth fighting for." Isabella's smile was cold. "And now good men are dying because my son is too distracted protecting his little pet to focus on the real threats." Rage burned through Selena's fear. "I'm not his pet." "Then what are you?" Selena opened her mouth, but no answer came. What was she? A hired actress who'd stayed too long? A woman falling for a man she barely knew? A liability wrapped in a lie? Isabella leaned forward. "Let me make this very simple. I'm offering you $1 million to disappear. Tonight. Right now. You take the money, leave the country, and never contact Dante again." Selena's breath stopped. $1 million. Enough to start over anywhere in the world. Enough to make sure her family was safe. Enough to erase every mistake she'd made in the last 2 weeks. "Why would you do that?" Selena whispered. "Because I love my son, and I won't watch him destroy himself over a woman who doesn't belong in his life." "You don't know what he feels." "I know exactly what he feels. Obsession, possession. The same thing his father felt for me 30 years ago." Isabella's expression darkened. "And I know how that story ends, in blood and regret, and a lifetime of wondering if love was ever real or just another kind of prison." Selena's chest tightened. "Dante's not his father." "No, he's worse. Because his father at least had limits. Dante has none." Isabella pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the table between them. $1 million, cash, untraceable. All you have to do is walk away." Selena stared at the envelope. Her entire life, she'd been drowning in debt, struggling to survive, fighting for scraps. And now someone was offering her freedom on a silver platter. All she had to do was abandon the one person who'd made her feel alive. "I need to talk to him first," Selena said. "That's not an option." "Why not?" "Because if you see him, you'll stay. And if you stay, you'll die." Isabella's voice was ice. "Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Because that's what happens to people who love men like Dante. They get caught in the crossfire. They become collateral damage. They end up in graves their loved ones can't even visit because the burial was too dangerous." Selena's hands shook. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Then explain why Dante's first girlfriend disappeared 10 years ago. Explain why no one's seen her since. Explain why my son won't talk about her even when he's drunk enough to forget his own name." The room tilted. "What happened to her?" Isabella's expression was merciless. "She loved him, and it got her killed." Selena couldn't breathe. "You're lying," she said again, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Isabella stood. "The offer expires in 1 hour. After that, you're on your own." She walked to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I do believe Dante cares about you, in his own broken way. But caring isn't the same as protecting. And love isn't the same as survival. Then she was gone. Selena sat alone in the silent house, staring at the envelope on the table. $1 million. Freedom. Safety. All she had to do was run. But 45 minutes later, Selena made her decision. She grabbed the envelope, walked to the front door, and told the guard she was ready to leave. He made a call, nodded, opened the door. A car was already waiting. Selena climbed into the back seat, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just pulled away from the safe house and headed toward the highway. Selena stared out the window as the trees blurred past. She was doing the right thing. She was protecting herself, protecting her family, protecting Dante from his own self-destructive need to save her. This was survival. This was smart. This was... The car stopped. Selena looked up, confused. They were on a deserted stretch of road surrounded by woods. No other cars. No lights. Nothing. Why are we stopping? The driver turned around, and Selena's blood turned to ice. It wasn't one of Dante's men. The driver smiled, cold, empty. Change of plans, sweetheart. Selena lunged for the door handle, but it was locked. The back door opened and hands grabbed her, yanking her out of the car. She screamed and fought, kicking and clawing, but there were too many of them. 3 men, maybe 4, all wearing masks. One of them slammed her against the side of the car, his hand around her throat. "Quiet," he hissed, "or I'll cut your tongue out right here." Selena froze, terror flooding every nerve. The man holding her nodded to someone behind him, and another figure stepped forward. Isabella Varelli. But her expression wasn't cold anymore. It was triumphant. "I told you," Isabella said softly, "you don't belong in this world." Selena's mind reeled. You set me up. I gave you a choice. You chose wrong." Isabella stepped closer. "My son has become weak because of you. Distracted. Vulnerable. So I'm removing the distraction. Dante will kill you for this." Isabella smiled. "Dante will never know. As far as he's concerned, you took the money and ran. Just another gold digger who couldn't handle the heat." The man holding Selena tightened his grip on her throat. Black spots danced across her vision. "Where are you taking me?" Selena choked out. "Somewhere my son will never find you." Isabella turned and walked back to her own car. The men dragged Selena toward a van parked further up the road. She fought with everything she had, but they were too strong, too trained. One of them pressed a cloth over her mouth and nose. Chemical sweetness flooded her senses. The world tilted sideways. And then everything went black. Selena woke up in darkness. Her head pounded. Her mouth tasted like copper. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. She was lying on a concrete floor in what felt like a basement. No windows. One bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. Footsteps echoed somewhere above her. Selena struggled to sit up, her pulse hammering. How long had she been unconscious? Hours? Days? Where the hell was she? The door at the top of the stairs opened. Light flooded down and a figure descended. Not Isabella, a man, older, silver hair, expensive suit. He studied Selena with the clinical detachment of someone examining an insect. "Awake. Good." His voice was smooth, cultured. "We need to talk." Selena's throat was raw. "Who are you?" "Victor Rossi. Perhaps you've heard of me." Horror crashed through her. The Rossi family. The ones who tried to kill Marco. The ones starting a war with Dante. "What do you want?" Victor smiled. "Leverage. You see, Dante Varelli has caused me significant trouble recently. Killed several of my men. Disrupted my operations. And all because of you. I didn't ask him to... No, but he did it anyway, which tells me something very valuable." Victor crouched down until he was eye level with her. "It tells me you matter to him, and things that matter can be used." Selena's blood ran cold. "He won't negotiate with you." "Oh, I'm not interested in negotiation. I'm interested in destruction." Victor stood. "Dante Varelli has ruled this city for too long. It's time for new leadership, and your death will be the spark that burns his empire to the ground. He'll kill you for this. Perhaps. But first he'll suffer, and that's all I really want." Victor turned and walked back up the stairs. The door slammed shut, and Selena was alone in the darkness, zip-tied and bleeding, with the horrifying realization that she'd walked straight into a trap. Isabella hadn't been trying to protect her. She'd been delivering her to Dante's worst enemy. Hours passed, maybe days. Selena lost track. They brought her water once, no food, no explanations, just waiting. She worked at the zip ties until her wrists bled, but they wouldn't budge. She screamed until her voice gave out, but no one came. Finally, the door opened again. Victor descended with two men flanking him. "Time to make a phone call," he said. One of the men yanked Selena to her feet and cut the zip ties. Her hands were numb, useless. Victor handed her a phone. "Call Dante. Tell him where you are." Selena stared at the phone. "I don't know where I am." "I'll tell him. You just need to make sure he believes it's really you." "And if I refuse?" Victor pulled a gun from his jacket and pressed it against her temple. "Then I kill you right now and send him pictures instead. Your choice." Selena's hand shook as she took the phone. Victor dialed a number and hit speaker. It rang twice. Then Dante's voice cut through the silence, raw and desperate. "Selena." Her throat closed up. "Dante, where are you? Are you hurt?" Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to leave and it's okay. Just tell me where you are." Victor leaned close to the phone. "Hello, Dante." Silence. Then Dante's voice turned to Winter. "Rossi." "Surprised?" "Where is she?" "Safe, for now. But that depends entirely on you." "What do you want?" "I want you to suffer the way you've made me suffer. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything." Victor's smile was cruel. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to dismantle your empire piece by piece, transfer your territories to me, hand over your assets, dissolve the Varelli name. And if I do, then maybe I'll let her live. Maybe isn't good enough. It's all you're getting." Dante's voice was deadly calm. "If you hurt her, I will erase your entire bloodline from existence. Your children, your grandchildren. Every person who shares your name will die screaming." Victor laughed. "Big words for a man with no leverage. I'm giving you one chance to walk away. Let her go, now, and I'll make your death quick. You're not in a position to make demands. Neither are you." Something in Dante's tone made Selena's breath catch. "Because you just made a critical mistake, Victor." "What mistake?" "You assumed Isabella was working for you." Silence. Victor's smile faltered. Dante's voice was ice and fury. "She wasn't. She was working for me." The basement door exploded inward. Men poured down the stairs. Dante's men, armed and moving like a tactical unit. Victor's guards went for their weapons, but they were too slow. Gunfire erupted. Selena hit the ground, her ears ringing, her heart slamming against her ribs. When the shooting stopped, Victor's men were dead, and Dante stood at the bottom of the stairs, gun in hand, pale eyes burning with something feral. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside Selena. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. Dante pulled her into his arms and she felt him shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought Isabella said—" "I know what she said. I told her to say it." Selena pulled back, confusion flooding through the shock. "What?" Dante's jaw was tight. "I knew there was a leak in my organization. Someone feeding information to the Rossis. I needed to draw them out, so I used you as bait." The words hit her like a physical blow. You used me?" "To save you." "Yes." "You let them take me." "I tracked you every second. The moment they moved you here, I knew." Selena stared at him, horror and betrayal tangling in her chest. "You let me think I was going to die. I couldn't risk tipping them off. So you sacrificed me. I saved you." "By letting them kidnap me." Her voice broke. "Do you have any idea what that felt like? Thinking no one was coming? Thinking I was going to die alone in the dark?" Dante's expression was stone, but something flickered in his eyes. "I did what I had to do." Selena shoved him away and stood on shaking legs. "You're just like your mother said. You don't protect people, you use them." "Selena, don't." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I'm done." She pushed past him and stumbled up the stairs. Behind her, she heard Dante say her name, but she didn't stop. She walked out of that basement and into the night, her entire body trembling, her mind fracturing under the weight of everything she'd lost. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Selena understood the truth. Dante Varelli might have saved her life, but he'd also destroyed any chance she had of ever trusting him again. Selena made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She collapsed against a brick wall in an alley that smelled like garbage and rain, her entire body shaking so violently she couldn't stand. Her wrists were still bleeding from the zip ties. Her throat was raw from screaming, and her mind kept replaying the moment Dante admitted the truth. "I used you as bait." She pressed her palms against her eyes and tried to breathe, but every inhale felt like broken glass in her lungs. Footsteps echoed in the mouth of the alley. Selena's head snapped up, panic flooding her system. But it wasn't Dante. It was Marco Castellano. He looked worse than the last time she'd seen him. Fresh bruises darkened his jaw, and he moved with the careful stiffness of someone nursing broken ribs. But his eyes were sharp as he crossed the alley and crouched in front of her. "You good?" Selena laughed bitterly. "Do I look good?" "You look alive. That's something." Marco pulled a pack of cigarettes from his jacket and offered her one. She shook her head. He lit one for himself and exhaled smoke into the cold night air. "Dante's losing his mind looking for you." "Good. He sent everyone. Every man he has. The entire organization is tearing this city apart trying to find you." "I don't care." Marco studied her for a long moment. "He told you about the bait thing?" "Yeah. And now you hate him?" "Yeah." Marco took another drag. "For what it's worth, he didn't want to do it. I was there when he made the call. He looked like he was going to put a bullet in his own head." "Then why did he?" "Because it was the only way to find the leak and stop the war before it killed everyone he cares about." Marco's voice was quiet. "Including you." Selena's throat tightened. "He should have told me. If he'd told you, you would have acted differently. The Rossis would have known, and they would have killed you for real." Marco flicked ash onto the pavement. "Dante gambled your trust to save your life. I'm not saying it was right, but I understand why he did it." "I can't do this anymore," Selena whispered. "I can't be in his world. I don't know how." "Then leave." She looked up sharply. Marco shrugged. "I'm serious. If you can't handle it, walk away. Dante will make sure you're protected. He'll set you up somewhere safe, somewhere far from here. You'll never have to see him again." "That's it? Just leave?" "That's the smart choice. The sane choice." Marco's expression was grim. "But if you stay, you need to understand something. This life doesn't get easier. It doesn't get safer. Every day you're with Dante, you're choosing danger. You're choosing blood. You're choosing to live with a target on your back." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've seen what happens to people who stay when they shouldn't. And I've seen what happens to Dante when he loses someone he loves." Marco stood, grinding the cigarette under his heel. "So make your choice, but make it knowing what it costs." He turned and walked away, leaving Selena alone in the alley with the weight of an impossible decision pressing down on her chest. Selena went to her mother's apartment. It was a tiny one-bedroom in Queens that smelled like lavender and old coffee. Her mother opened the door in scrubs, exhaustion etched into every line of her face, and the moment she saw Selena, her expression crumpled. "Oh, baby, what happened?" Selena tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She just fell into her mother's arms and sobbed. They sat on the worn couch while Selena's mother held her, stroking her hair the way she had when Selena was a child waking up from nightmares. "Tell me," her mother said softly. So Selena did. Not everything. She couldn't tell her mother about the Mafia, about Dante's world, about the men who'd kidnapped her, or the basement where she'd thought she was going to die. But she told her enough. About meeting someone. About falling for him. About discovering he'd lied. Her mother listened without interrupting, her hands steady and warm. When Selena finally fell silent, her mother sighed. "Do you love him?" The question landed like a punch. Selena opened her mouth to say no, to deny it, to pretend the last 2 weeks had been nothing but survival and fear. But the lie wouldn't come. "I don't know," she whispered. "Yes, you do." Selena looked up at her mother through tear-blurred eyes. "He hurt me. I know. He used me. I know. I should hate him. Her mother cupped Selena's face gently. But you don't, and that's what's breaking your heart. Selena's chest tightened. What do I do? That depends. Can you forgive him? I don't know if I can. Then you have your answer. Her mother's voice was sad but firm. Love without trust is just another kind of prison, baby, and you deserve better than that. Selena closed her eyes, letting the truth of those words sink in. She did deserve better. She deserved safety, honesty, a life that didn't involve armed guards and underground wars. She deserved to walk away. But when she thought about never seeing Dante again, something inside her chest cracked open. What? Selena stayed at her mother's apartment for 2 days. She didn't answer her phone, didn't check the news, didn't think about anything except breathing and trying to remember who she'd been before Dante Varelli walked into her life. On the third morning, her mother shook her awake. Someone's here for you. Selena's heart stopped. Dante? No. A woman. Selena stumbled into the living room and froze. Isabella Varelli sat on the couch like she belonged there, dressed in a charcoal suit, her posture perfect despite the cramped surroundings. Rage flooded through Selena. Get out. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. Isabella's expression was unreadable. I owe you an apology. Selena laughed harshly. An apology? You handed me over to the Rossis. I handed you over to Dante. Isabella's voice was calm. Everything I did, the offer, the staged betrayal, the delivery to Victor, was orchestrated by my son. I was following his orders. The room tilted. You're lying. I'm not. Dante knew Victor would use you as leverage. He needed Victor to think he had the upper hand, so he asked me to play the villain. Isabella's gaze didn't waver. I wasn't protecting you at the wedding. I was setting the stage for Victor to believe I was his ally. Selena's mind reeled. Why would you do that? Because Dante is my son, and despite everything I said about him being ruthless and broken, I would burn this entire city to the ground before I let him suffer. You told me he'd destroy me. I told you the truth. He will destroy you, just not in the way I thought. Isabella stood. I believed you were a weakness, a distraction that would get him killed, but I was wrong. About what? About you. Isabella's expression softened fractionally. You didn't run when the Rossis took you. You didn't break when Victor threatened you, and when Dante came for you, the first thing you did was confront him, instead of thanking him. She paused. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Selena's throat was tight. Why are you telling me this? Because my son is falling apart without you, and because I've seen enough people die for love to know when it's real. He used me. He saved you. There's a difference. Not to me. Isabella studied her for a long moment. Then I'll ask you the same question I asked myself 30 years ago when I fell in love with Dante's father. Can you love a monster and still keep your soul? Selena didn't have an answer. Isabella pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the coffee table. That's a plane ticket. First class to anywhere you want. New identity. New life. Dante won't look for you. I'll make sure of it. Why? Because if you can't forgive him, staying will only destroy you both. Isabella's voice was quiet. But if you can forgive him, then you need to understand what that means. It means choosing this life, choosing danger, choosing to stand beside a man the world fears, and learning not to flinch when he does what's necessary to protect you. Isabella walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, she said, I hope you stay. My son needs someone who isn't afraid to tell him when he's wrong, and you're the first person I've ever seen do it and live. Then she was gone. Selena stared at the envelope on the table. Freedom, safety, a life without Dante. All she had to do was take it. That night, Selena made her decision. She took a cab to the penthouse where this had all started. The doorman recognized her immediately and let her through without question. The elevator ride felt like falling. When the doors opened, Dante was standing in the living room with his back to her, staring out at the city lights. He wore jeans and a black t-shirt, and even from across the room she could see the tension in his shoulders. I know you're there, he said without turning around. Selena stepped into the penthouse. The doors closed behind her. How? I always know when you're close. Dante turned slowly, and the look on his face made her breath catch. He looked wrecked. Dark circles shadowed his pale eyes. Stubble covered his jaw. His hands were bruised and cut, like he'd been hitting something or someone repeatedly. You came back, he said quietly. I came to tell you I'm leaving. Something in his expression cracked. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? Dante's voice was rough. That I'll lock you in this apartment and never let you go? That I'll follow you wherever you run? That I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make you forgive me? Would you? Yes. The honesty in his voice was devastating. Selena's hands clenched. You used me as bait. I know. You let them take me. I know. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Dante crossed the room until he was standing a few feet away, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, close enough that she could feel the pull between them like gravity. You want the truth? His voice was low and raw. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd try to stop me, because I knew you'd offer yourself up to save everyone else, because you're reckless and brave and too good for this world, and I couldn't risk losing you. So you lied. So I kept you alive. Dante's jaw tightened. I would do it again. I would lie to you 1,000 times if it meant you survived. That's not love, Dante. That's control. You're right. It's not love. He stepped closer, and she could see the desperation burning in his pale eyes. It's obsession. It's possession. It's the only way I know how to care about someone without destroying them. You did destroy me. I know. His voice broke. And I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Selena. But I can't change who I am. I can't be the man you deserve. All I can be is the man who would burn the world down to keep you safe. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know if that's enough. Then tell me what is. Tell me what you need, and I'll give it to you. I need to trust you. Dante's expression shattered. I don't know if I can give you that. Not the way you want. Not without risking you. Then we're done. Selena turned to leave. Dante's hand caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. Wait. She looked back at him. If you walk out that door, Dante said quietly, I won't follow you. I won't look for you. I'll let you go. His grip tightened fractionally. But before you leave, I need you to know something. What? I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Selena's breath stopped. Dante's pale eyes held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. I've never said that to anyone, he continued. Not once in my entire life. But I'm saying it to you. I love you, Selena, and I'm terrified of it, because everyone I've ever cared about has either betrayed me or died, and I don't know how to love you without destroying both of us in the process. Selena's chest felt like it was caving in. Dante, I'm not asking you to stay. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that you're the only good thing that's ever happened to me. His voice was barely a whisper. And if you leave, I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd been strong enough to be the man you needed. Selena stared at him through tears. Every rational part of her brain screamed to walk away, to take the plane ticket Isabella offered, to start over somewhere safe. But her heart was louder. She pulled her wrist free from his grip. Dante's expression went blank, and he took a step back. I understand. No, Selena said. You don't. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. Dante froze for half a second. Then his arms came around her, pulling her against him with a desperation that felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. I'm not leaving, Selena whispered against his mouth. But I'm not staying the way things were. What do you want? I want the truth. Always. Even when it hurts. Even when it's dangerous. No more lies. No more using me as bait without telling me. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I want to be your partner, not your possession. Dante's jaw tightened. I don't know if I can do that. Then learn, because that's the only way this works. For a long moment, Dante said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. Okay? Okay? I'll try. I can't promise I won't fuck it up, but I'll try. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was honest. And for now, that was enough. Yeshikit. The next morning, Selena woke up in Dante's bed with sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of the city humming below. Dante was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped. I don't care what it takes. Find him. No, alive. I need to know who else he was working with. Good. He hung up and turned to find Selena watching him. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. Who were you talking about? Dante hesitated. Then, true to his promise, he answered. The leak in my organization, we found him. Selena sat up slowly. Who was it? One of my oldest lieutenants. Been with me for 15 years. Dante's expression was stone. Victor got to him 6 months ago, promised him money and protection if he fed information about my operations. What are you going to do to him? What do you think? The question wasn't hostile, just honest. Selena swallowed hard. You're going to kill him. Yes. She should have been horrified, should have argued, should have begged him not to, but she'd made a choice last night, and part of that choice was accepting who Dante was. When? She asked quietly. Dante's pale eyes searched her face. Tonight. Can I come with you? He blinked. What? You said you wanted me to be your partner. That means understanding your world. All of it. Selena's voice was steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. So let me see it. Selena, you don't want to be... Yes, I do. Because if I'm going to stay, I need to know what that means. I need to see the worst of it. She met his gaze. Show me who you really are, Dante. No filters, no protection, just the truth. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. That night, Selena followed Dante into hell. They drove to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that didn't exist on any map, surrounded by chain-link fences and shadows. Inside, the air smelled like oil and rust. Dante's men were already there, 6 of them, armed and silent, standing in a semicircle around a man tied to a chair in the center of the empty space. The man's face was bruised and bloody. He looked up when Dante entered, and something that might have been regret flickered across his expression. Dante? Don't. Dante's voice was ice. You don't get to explain. You don't get to apologize. You just get to answer my questions. The man swallowed hard. What do you want to know? Who else is working with the Rossis? No one. I swear. It was just me. Liar? Dante nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward and hit the traitor across the face. Blood sprayed across the concrete floor. Selena flinched but didn't look away. Try again, Dante said calmly. Who else? The man spat blood. Go to hell. Another nod. Another hit. This time, the crack of bone was audible. The man screamed. Selena's stomach turned, but she forced herself to keep watching. This was the world she'd chosen, the man she'd chosen. She couldn't look away now. Dante crouched in front of the traitor, his expression blank. Last chance. Names. The man's breath came in ragged gasps. Finally, he whispered 2 names. Dante stood and pulled a gun from his jacket. Thank you. He raised the weapon, and Selena realized with horrifying clarity what was about to happen. Dante, wait. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse like thunder. The man slumped forward, dead. Silence crashed down. Dante holstered his weapon and turned to his men. Clean this up. Find the other 2. Bring them to me by morning. They nodded and got to work. Dante walked toward Selena, his expression unreadable. She stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. When he reached her, he stopped. Are you okay? Selena's voice was barely a whisper. You killed him. Yes. Just like that. He betrayed me, betrayed everyone who trusted him, got good people killed. Dante's pale eyes held hers. What did you think would happen? Selena didn't have an answer. Dante reached up and cupped her face gently. This is who I am, Selena. This is what I do. And if you stay, you'll see it again. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized was falling. So I'm asking you one more time. Can you live with this? Every instinct screamed at her to run. But beneath the horror, beneath the fear, beneath everything rational, one truth remained. She loved him, and love didn't always make sense. "Yes," Selena whispered. "I can live with it." Dante's expression cracked, and he pulled her into his arms. They stood there in the warehouse surrounded by blood and death and the wreckage of the choices they'd both made. And Selena understood with terrifying clarity she'd crossed a line tonight. There was no going back. Teak. The war with the Rossies came to a head 3 days later. Victor made his move at a charity gala downtown, the kind of high-profile event where politicians and criminals mingled under chandeliers worth more than most people's homes. Dante had known it was coming. His intelligence network had been tracking Victor's movements for weeks, waiting for the moment he'd surface in public where Dante could end this without starting a bloodbath that would destroy half the city. Selena stood beside him in the ballroom, wearing a silver gown that made her look like she belonged among the elite, even though her hands were shaking inside her gloves. "He's here," Dante murmured, his hand resting against the small of her back. Selena followed his gaze across the room. Victor Rossi stood near the bar, surrounded by his own men, smiling like he owned the world. Their eyes met across the crowded space. Victor raised his glass in a mocking toast. Dante's expression was stone. "Stay close to Marco, no matter what happens." "Dante, promise me." Selena nodded. Marco appeared at her elbow, his expression grim. "Ready? For what?" "For this to get ugly." Before Selena could respond, Dante walked across the ballroom toward Victor. The room went silent. Everyone felt it, the shift in the air, the tension crackling like electricity before a storm. Dante stopped a few feet from Victor, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm. "This ends tonight," he said quietly. Victor smiled. "Does it? You have two choices. Walk away now. Leave the city, never come back, or stay and die." Big words. Not words. A promise. Victor's smile widened. "You think you can kill me here, in front of all these people?" "I don't think. I know." Something flickered across Victor's expression. Fear, maybe? Or realization. He glanced at his men, then back at Dante. "You're bluffing." Dante pulled his hand from his pocket. In it was a phone. He pressed a button, and across the ballroom, every exit slammed shut simultaneously. Panic rippled through the crowd. Dante's voice cut through the chaos. "Nobody leaves until this is finished." Victor's face went pale. "You're insane." "I'm done playing games." Dante's pale eyes were merciless. "You tried to kill my people. You kidnapped the woman I love. You started a war you can't win." He stepped closer. "So I'm ending it." Victor lunged, but Dante was faster. He grabbed Victor's wrist, twisted, and drove his knee into the older man's stomach. Victor collapsed, gasping. Dante pulled his gun and pressed it against Victor's temple. The ballroom went silent. "No," Victor choked out. "Please. You should have walked away when I gave you the chance." Selena watched from across the room, her heart in her throat. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Dante's finger tightened on the trigger, and someone screamed Selena's name. She turned just in time to see one of Victor's men lunging toward her with a knife. Marco moved faster, slamming into the attacker and driving him to the ground. But in the chaos, another man grabbed Selena from behind, his arm locked around her throat. Cold steel pressed against her ribs. "Drop the gun, Varelli," the man shouted, "or I put a bullet in her heart." Everything stopped. Dante's head snapped towards Selena, and the look on his face was pure terror. "Let her go." "Drop the gun." Dante's hand shook. For the first time since Selena met him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Dante," she whispered, "don't." "Shut up," the man holding her hissed, pressing the gun harder against her ribs. Dante's pale eyes locked on hers, and in that moment, Selena made her choice. She drove her elbow back into her captor's ribs, twisted out of his grip, and dropped to the floor. Gunfire erupted. When the smoke cleared, the man who'd held her was dead, and Dante was running toward her. He dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms, his hands shaking as they roamed over her body, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay." "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't." Selena cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I'm okay. I'm here. Behind them, Marco had Victor pinned to the ground, a gun pressed to his head. Dante, Marco called, what do you want me to do with him? Dante looked at Victor, then at Selena, then back at Victor. Let him live. Shock rippled through the room. Marco blinked. What? Let him live, Dante repeated. He stood, pulling Selena up with him. But he leaves the city tonight, and if he ever comes back, there won't be a second chance. Victor stared up at him, disbelief etched into his bloodied face. Dante's expression was stone. I'm done killing for revenge. Get him out of here. Marco hauled Victor to his feet and dragged him toward the exit. The ballroom slowly came back to life. Whispers spreading like wildfire. People pulling out phones. Security rushing to restore order. But Dante only saw Selena. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers, his breathing ragged. You're insane, he whispered. I learned from the best. And despite everything, the violence, the fear, the impossible situation they'd survived, Dante laughed. It was quiet and broken and real. And Selena realized she'd never heard him laugh before. I love you, Dante said. I know. Say it back. Selena smiled against his mouth. I love you too. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos and witnesses and the wreckage of the war they'd survived, Selena Moretti kissed the most dangerous man in New York and felt, for the first time in her life, completely. The aftermath of the gala hit the news before sunrise. Selena sat in Dante's penthouse, watching the reports scroll across every channel. Witnesses describing the standoff, speculation about who Dante Varelli really was, blurry cell phone footage of the moment he'd pressed a gun to Victor Rossi's head. And through it all, one photo kept appearing. Dante and Selena, kissing in the middle of the chaos. Her face was fully visible now, no more anonymity, no more hiding. The entire world knew who she was. Dante stood by the windows with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped as he gave orders to people Selena couldn't see. He'd been on calls for 3 hours straight, managing the fallout, containing the damage, making sure Victor Rossi left the city the way he'd promised. When he finally hung up, the exhaustion in his face was staggering. It's done, he said quietly. Victor's gone. His organization is scattering. The war's over. Selena set down her coffee cup. What about the witnesses? The people at the gala? Taken care of. Half of them owe me favors, the other half are too scared to talk. Dante's pale eyes met hers. But the photos are out there. We can't take those back. I know. Which means your life just changed permanently. Selena stood and crossed the room until she was standing in front of him. I made my choice, Dante. I'm not running. You should be. His voice was rough. You have no idea what's coming. The media will tear you apart. Every enemy I have will see you as leverage. Your family will be watched. Your friends will be questioned. You'll never have privacy again. Then we'll deal with it. Selena, Stop. She reached up and cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I'm not leaving. I'm not scared. And I'm not going to let you push me away because you think you're protecting me. Dante's jaw tightened. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Love someone without destroying them. Selena's chest ached. Then we'll figure it out together. For a long moment, Dante just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her hair. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. And despite everything, the violence, the fear, the impossible future ahead of them, Dante laughed. The next few weeks were brutal. Reporters camped outside the penthouse. Paparazzi followed Selena everywhere. Her phone exploded with messages from people she hadn't talked to in years, all suddenly interested in her connection to Dante Varelli. Her mother called 3 times a day, terrified. Her brother showed up at the penthouse demanding answers. And through it all, Dante stayed beside her. He hired security to protect her family, paid off journalists to kill the worst stories, threatened anyone who got too close with consequences that made them disappear overnight. But he also did something Selena didn't expect. He started letting her in, not just into his penthouse or his bed, but into his world. He brought her to meetings with his lieutenants and let her listen as they discussed territory disputes and business deals that straddled the line between legal and criminal. He showed her the financial records of his legitimate businesses, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios, the charity foundations he used to launder money and buy political influence. He told her about the people he'd killed, the choices he'd made, the things he'd done that still kept him awake at night. And when Selena asked why he was telling her all of this, Dante's answer was simple. Because you asked for the truth, so I'm giving it to you. It was terrifying, but it was also honest. And slowly, painfully, Selena started to understand the man she'd fallen in love with. He wasn't a monster. He was a survivor who'd been raised in violence and taught that power was the only thing that mattered. A man who'd built walls so high around his heart that he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone climb them. But with Selena, the walls were coming down. Well, 3 months after the gala, Isabella Varelli invited them to dinner. Selena sat across from Dante's mother in a private dining room at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign. The kind of place where prime ministers and mob bosses ate at tables 10 feet apart and pretended not to notice each other. Isabella looked elegant as always, dressed in navy silk, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. But when she looked at Selena, something in her expression had changed. "You're still here," Isabella said. Selena met her gaze steadily. "I am. Despite everything I told you, despite the danger, despite knowing what my son is capable of." "Yes." Isabella took a sip of wine, studying Selena over the rim of her glass. "Why?" "Because I love him. Love isn't enough in this world." "Maybe not," Selena said quietly. "But it's a start." Isabella set down her glass. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her expression softened fractionally. "I owe you an apology." Selena blinked. "For what?" "For underestimating you. For thinking you were just another woman looking for money and power. For believing you'd break the moment things got difficult." Isabella's voice was quiet. "You proved me wrong. I don't need your approval." "No, but you have it anyway." Isabella glanced at Dante, who sat beside Selena with his hand resting on her knee beneath the table. "You've changed him." Dante's jaw tightened. "Mother." "It's true. You're softer than you were 6 months ago, more human." Isabella's gaze returned to Selena. "He smiles now. Did you know that? I haven't seen my son smile in 15 years, but he smiles when he looks at you." Selena's throat tightened. Isabella stood, smoothing her dress. "I have somewhere else to be. But before I go, I want you to know something, Selena." "What?" "Welcome to the family." Isabella left without another word. Selena stared after her, her mind reeling. Dante squeezed her knee gently. "You okay? Did that just happen? My mother doesn't say things she doesn't mean. So she actually likes me now?" Dante's mouth curved into a rare smile. "Apparently." Selena laughed, and the sound was bright and unexpected in the quiet restaurant. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. 6 months later, Dante proposed. Not at a wedding in front of hundreds of witnesses. Not in some grand public display designed to send a message. Just the two of them, standing on the balcony of the penthouse at midnight, the city lights glowing below like scattered stars. Dante pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it without ceremony. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, a statement. Selena stared at the ring, her heart pounding. "You're serious?" "Yes." "We've only known each other for 9 months." "I don't care." "Your world is dangerous. People will use me against you. We'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." "I know." "And you still want to marry me?" Dante's pale eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I've spent my entire life alone, Selena, building walls, pushing people away, believing that caring about someone was the same as giving them a weapon to destroy me." His voice was quiet. "But with you, I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want walls. I don't want to push you away." He paused. "I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life and know that no matter how dark things get, you're there." Tears burned Selena's eyes. "Dante, you don't have to answer now. You can think about it. You can—" "Yes." He froze. "What?" "Yes, I'll marry you." Dante stared at her like he didn't quite believe what he was hearing. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her so fiercely she forgot how to breathe. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. Dante slid the ring onto her finger, and Selena looked down at the diamond, catching the city lights. "This is insane," she whispered. "I know. We're going to regret this." "Probably. But I love you anyway." Dante's expression cracked into something raw and vulnerable and completely real. "I love you too." And standing there on the balcony overlooking a city that had tried to destroy them both, Selena Moretti realized something terrifying and beautiful. She'd walked into Dante Varelli's world expecting to play a role for one night. Instead, she'd found the one person who made her feel completely alive. The wedding took place 1 year after the night they met, not at a lavish estate surrounded by armed guards and criminals. At a small courthouse downtown with only a handful of witnesses, Marco stood as Dante's best man, grinning like an idiot despite the bruises still fading from his latest altercation with a rival family. Selena's mother cried through the entire ceremony, clutching a tissue and whispering prayers under her breath, even though Selena had asked her not to. Isabella sat in the front row wearing black, because of course she did. But when Selena caught her eye, the older woman smiled. A real smile. And when the judge asked if Dante took Selena to be his lawfully wedded wife, he didn't hesitate. "I do." Selena's voice shook when she said the same words back. Then Dante kissed her, and the small crowd erupted in applause. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were no white horses or grand romantic gestures, just two broken people choosing each other despite every reason not to. And somehow, that felt more real than any fantasy ever could. Mystic. 5 years later, Selena woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows of a house she still couldn't quite believe was hers. Not a penthouse, not a fortress. A real house. 3 stories. A garden. Space to breathe. Dante had bought it 6 months after they were married, claiming the penthouse was too exposed, too dangerous, too full of bad memories. But Selena knew the truth. He'd bought it because he wanted to build something new, something that didn't smell like violence and fear, something that felt like home. She found Dante in the kitchen, already dressed in jeans and a white t-shirt, making coffee with the kind of focus he used to reserve for planning territorial takeovers. "Morning," Selena said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Dante turned and kissed her forehead. "Morning. Sleep okay?" "Better than you, apparently. When did you get up?" 4, couldn't sleep. "Nightmares?" "No, just thinking." Selena pulled back to look at him. 5 years hadn't softened Dante's edges completely. He still carried himself like a man ready for war, still had that calculating look in his pale eyes when he thought no one was watching. But he was different now. Lighter, somehow, like the weight he'd carried his entire life had finally started to ease. "Thinking about what?" Selena asked. Dante's mouth curved into a rare smile. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He led her through the house and out into the garden, where morning dew still clung to the grass and birds sang in the trees they'd planted together 2 years ago. In the center of the garden was a swing set, brand new, still smelling like fresh paint and wood. Selena's breath caught. "Dante, I know we said we'd wait," he said quietly, "but I've been thinking, and I'm tired of waiting for things to be perfect. They'll never be perfect. There will always be danger, always be enemies, always be reasons to put our lives on hold." He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. "But I don't want to wait anymore, Selena. I want to build a life with you, a real one. Kids and chaos and all the messy, terrifying, beautiful things that come with it." Tears streamed down Selena's face. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Selena launched herself into his arms, and Dante caught her easily, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Yes," she whispered against his neck. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." And for the first time in 5 years, Selena let herself imagine a future that didn't involve looking over her shoulder. A future where she and Dante could be more than survivors. They could be a family. 2 years later, their son was born. They named him James, after Dante's grandfather, the only member of the Varelli family who'd ever shown him kindness. Selena held the baby in her arms while Dante sat beside the hospital bed, staring at his son with an expression she'd never seen before. Wonder, fear. Love so fierce it was almost painful to witness. "He's perfect," Dante whispered. "He is." "I don't know how to do this." Selena reached out and took his hand. "Neither do I. But we'll figure it out together." Dante looked at her, and in his pale eyes she saw everything they'd survived. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of violence and fear and impossible choices. But she also saw the man he'd become. Not a monster, not a king, just a father holding his son for the first time and realizing that he'd finally found something worth protecting more than power. "I love you," Dante said quietly. "I know. Say it back." Selena smiled, exhausted and happy and completely overwhelmed. "I love you too, Damashik." The years that followed weren't easy. There were still threats, still enemies who saw Dante's family as a weakness to exploit. There were nights when Selena woke up to find Dante sitting by the window with a gun in his lap, watching the street below for movement that never came. There were moments when she wondered if she'd made the right choice, if bringing a child into this world had been selfish, if the price of loving Dante would eventually become too high. But then James would laugh, and Dante would smile. Or Selena would catch Dante reading bedtime stories with their son curled against his chest, his voice soft and gentle in a way that still surprised her. Or she'd watch him teach James to ride a bike in the garden, patient and careful, and nothing like the ruthless man the world feared. And in those moments, Selena knew. She'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Dante took Selena back to the restaurant where they'd had their first real conversation, the same private dining room, the same table. But everything else was different. Dante looked older now. Silver streaked through his dark hair, and lines had formed around his eyes. Not from violence, but from smiling at his son. Selena had changed too. She carried herself differently. Stronger. More certain. Like someone who'd walked through fire and come out forged instead of broken. 10 years, Dante said, raising his glass. "I didn't think we'd make it past one." Selena laughed. "Neither did I. And yet here we are." "Here we are." They clinked glasses and drank. For a while they just sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from years of knowing someone so completely that words weren't always necessary. Finally, Dante spoke. "Do you ever regret it?" Selena looked up. "Regret what?" "Saying yes that first night, signing the contract, walking into my world." She thought about it, really thought about it. About the fear and the violence and the countless nights she'd spent wondering if she'd survive to see morning. About the family she'd gained and the anonymity she'd lost. About the man sitting across from her, who'd once been a stranger, offering $50,000 for a performance. "No," Selena said quietly. "I don't regret it." "Why not?" "Because despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and all the times I thought we wouldn't make it, you gave me something I'd been searching for my entire life." "What's that?" Selena reached across the table and took his hand. "A reason to stop surviving and start living." Dante's expression cracked, and he brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "You saved me," he said. "You know that, right? I was drowning in my own darkness, and you pulled me out. We saved each other." "Maybe." They sat there holding hands across the table, two people who'd started as a lie and become the most honest thing either of them had ever known. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of their home while James slept safely inside. The city glowed in the distance, the same city that had tried to destroy them both. But they'd survived. More than survived. They'd built something real from the wreckage. Dante wrapped his arms around Selena from behind, and she leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. "Do you think it'll always be like this?" she asked quietly. "Like what?" "Hard. Dangerous. Unpredictable." Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Probably. My world doesn't come with guarantees. There will always be enemies. Always be people who want to hurt me by hurting you. That's not reassuring." "No, but it's honest." He tightened his arms around her. "But I can promise you this. As long as I'm breathing, no one will touch you or our son. I'll burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt what's mine." Selena turned in his arms to face him. I'm not yours, Dante. I'm with you. There's a difference. His mouth curved into a small smile. You're right. I'm sorry. You're forgiven. Dante leaned down and kissed her, slow and deep and full of 10 years of history. When they broke apart, Selena rested her forehead against his. We're going to be okay, she whispered. How do you know? Because we've survived everything else, and we'll survive whatever comes next. Dante's pale eyes held hers, and in them she saw everything they'd been and everything they'd become. Together, he said. Together. And standing there on the balcony overlooking a city full of danger and possibility, Selena Moretti Virelli understood something profound. She'd walked into Dante's world as a struggling designer desperate for money. She'd stayed because of a lie that became truth. And she'd built a life with a man everyone feared because beneath the violence and the reputation and the darkness, she'd found something worth fighting for. Love didn't make their life safe, but it made it worth living. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Brashid. Years later, when James was old enough to ask questions, Selena told him the truth. Not all of it, not the darkest parts, but enough. She told him about the night she met his father, about the contract and the wedding, and the dangerous world she'd walked into with her eyes wide open. She told him about the choices she'd made, the fears she'd survived, the love that had saved them both. And when James asked if she regretted any of it, Selena smiled. Not for a second. Even though it was dangerous? Especially because it was dangerous. Because the best things in life are never safe. They're just worth the risk. James thought about that for a moment. Then he asked the question Selena had been waiting for. Do you think Dad's a bad man? Selena looked across the garden to where Dante stood talking on the phone, his expression serious, his shoulders carrying the weight of an empire he'd built from blood and power. But when he caught her eye, he smiled. And in that smile, Selena saw the man he'd become. Not perfect, not innocent, but trying. Every single day, trying to be better than the world expected him to be. No, Selena said quietly. Your father isn't a bad man. He's a complicated man who's done bad things. But he's also the bravest, most loyal, most fiercely protective person I've ever known. She looked at her son. And he loves us more than anything in this world. Even more than his business? Even more than that. James seemed satisfied with that answer. And as Selena watched her son run off to play, she felt Dante's arms wrap around her from behind. What did he ask you? If you were a bad man, Dante tensed. What did you say? The truth. That you're complicated. But you're ours. Dante exhaled slowly, and Selena felt some of the tension leave his body. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For not giving up on me. For staying when you should have run. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. Selena turned in his arms and cupped his face. You don't have to thank me for loving you, Dante. It's the easiest thing I've ever done. Liar. She laughed. Okay, maybe not the easiest, but the most worthwhile. Dante kissed her, and in that kiss was everything they'd survived and everything they'd built. 10 years of love and fear and impossible choices. 10 years of learning that sometimes the safest place in the world was in the arms of the man everyone else feared. And as the sun set over the city that had tried to destroy them, Selena Moretti Virelli knew with absolute certainty she'd made the right choice. Not because their life was perfect, but because it was theirs. And that was enough.